Members, this is the panel on manpower meeting. We have a quorum, so let's skip the start. Item 1 on the agenda, confirmation of minutes of meeting held on the last occasion. We have not received any amendment proposed by members, so can we confirm the minutes? All right, thank you. So minutes of the last meeting are confirmed. Information paper issued since the last meeting. Mr. KWOK Wai-keung was proposing that the joint meeting of the Panel on Manpower and Panel on Development to be held to discuss issues relating to the design of new residential buildings and occupational safety of workers engaged in external wall works. And we will be discussing with the development panel. And we're discussing with the administration on when they could give a response. They will be giving us a written response first, and we'll decide with the chairman of the development panel whether a joint meeting should be held. Date of the next meeting. Maybe we can invite the representatives from Labor and Welfare Bureau to come in first, so that we know the date of the next meeting. The next meeting will be held on the 28th or the 18th of February 2014 at 4:30, and we would like to discuss the issue of the employment of foreign domestic helpers and the regulation over intermediaries, because we're going to discuss two items. Two issues in the first item: the employment of FTHs and regulation of intermediaries, and also the other issue we will be also inviting deputations, so more time will be needed. So we're going to push forward the time of the meeting. It will begin at 3:30. So two issues, one on foreign domestic helpers and also on youth employment, from 3:30 to 6:30. Mr. Sin Chung Kai. I support the discussion of foreign domestic helpers because this is already international news, and data should be given by various departments such as the police, including the number of complaints, and the Labor and Welfare Bureau should also discuss the registration mechanism and any sanction mechanism. And Chairman, I agree that we should receive deputations. And Chairman, I don't know whether through you this can be provided. Several countries are involved: the Philippines and Indonesia, and also Bangladesh, and on the regulation over intermediaries in their own jurisdictions. I wonder if information can be provided. So let's welcome from the Labor and Welfare Bureau, Secretary, Permanent Secretary, as well as Commissioner. We are talking about items for discussion at the next meeting, including the employment of foreign domestic helpers and intermediaries. And Mrs. Sin Chung Kai has asked for information from various departments, including number of complaints from the police and also the regulation of intermediaries in other jurisdictions, and also support for foreign domestic helpers. So can we ask the research office of LegCo to look into that? I recall that there should be some information in relation to Indonesia and the Philippines, and I will liaise with the research office and see how this information can be provided to members. All right. So we'll take on Mr. Sin Chung Kai's suggestion. So on the issue of foreign domestic helpers, the police will be involved, immigration policy as well, because on the point of their being abused, the immigration policy is related, and also intermediaries or agencies. So I hope the Security Bureau, the Police, Immigration Department, and Labor and Welfare Department, and the Labor and Welfare Bureau and the Labor Department could attend. And Mr. Peng So Peng, I see you've raised your hand. Any questions for the next meeting? Mr. Yip Kwok Him. Well, next, at the next meeting, if you want to invite deputations to come, will there be enough time for discussion? Even if this meeting will last for 3 hours, I don't know whether we can receive all the deputations. So perhaps you should just discuss one item. Will this be more pragmatic? I think the other possibility is to hold a special meeting. Originally, on the 18th of February, the Labor and Welfare suggested review of the employment ordinance and whether there should be medical certificates. Arrangement should be reviewed, and we originally agreed that we should have a special meeting, but the Labor and Welfare Bureau on discussion couldn't cooperate in this regard. But taking on Mr. Yip's suggestion, maybe we can split into 2 meetings. Well, I'm not suggesting we have a special meeting, but if you want to have a public hearing, you need to have sufficient time. I don't necessarily I think that we need to have a special meeting for the discussion of this. What about your view, Mr. Sin? I think the LegCo should do something. On the point of foreign domestic helpers, I think something should be done. For 2 consecutive Sundays, we have had marches, and there have been views expressed over the welfare of foreign domestic helpers. I think we need to hold 2 meetings. As for youth employment and medical certificates issued by chiropractors, we can deal with these items in a regular meeting. So after the Chinese New Year, I think we should find a time as soon as possible to discuss this. Due to the circumstances now happening in Hong Kong, we should do something. So if we don't have a special meeting, there might not be enough time for the item. So for the meeting on the 18th of February, this will be for youth employment and chiropractors. And Mr. Yip Kwok Wai-keung suggested a special meeting. I think we should hold one, because it's concern is a concern raised in the international arena. So a circulation will be issued. I hope that the special meeting will be held near the 18th of February. So coming back to the agenda items today, we are going to hear from the Secretary for Labour and Welfare, his policy briefing on the Policy Address Initiatives 2014. So over to you, Secretary, and then the floor will be open to members for questions. This item will end at 9:50, and the Education Bureau will also make a briefing on the qualification frameworks. So for the first hour or so, we're going to discuss the initiatives under the Labour and Welfare Bureau. Over to you, Secretary. Thank you. Just very briefly, there are several areas in the policy address that we are focusing on. First, on youth employment and training. The first initiative is set through the YETP, Youth Employment and Training Program. We have rolled out a number of pilot projects, and we have also worked closely with the Vocational Training Council and the Employment Retraining Board. And in the first quarter of this year, we're going to roll out 2 pilot programs with the VTC. The first is Achieve the Potential, which targets younger people who are younger, aged 15 and 19, and less experienced. The aim is to provide on-the-job training and vocational training for them to explore their career aspiration and join the job market. And we're going to provide 300 quotas. And the other project is entitled Service Industry Trainee Scheme Retail Industry. And we're going to extend it to care services and the retail service based on the good response received in the last round for the beauty trade, and 180 on-the-job training quotas can be provided in the coming financial year. And to cater for the manpower needs of the welfare and care sector, the LWB, together with other relevant organizations, rolled out a pilot scheme for the younger generation, and several 10 secondary school leavers joined the program, which offered on-the-job training, and they could also get subsidies. It's a 2-year part-time course offered by the Open University, so that they could move on to become elderly carers and also registered nurses. And the project was well received, and we're going to provide 1,000 additional quotas for our target groups, which are secondary, Form 5 and Form 6 school leavers. And as I mentioned, we're going to work with other organizations, including ERB, etc., to see how we can step up our collaboration and provide more services to our youth. The other scheme is the working holiday scheme, and the scheme has received a very good response. 9 countries have signed bilateral agreements since its introduction, including New Zealand, Australia, Ireland, Germany, Japan, Canada, etc. Over 30,000 youths in Hong Kong have explored the world, and they have also began to explore themselves in terms of their personal experience. This is beneficial, and we are discussing with other countries on bilateral working holiday arrangements to be rolled out this year. Work incentive transport subsidy. Well, members are all aware that we have started the dual-track approach, and since last July, the response has been quite good. And as set out in the paper, we have over 23,000 applications filed on the individual basis. In fact, altogether we have approved over 19,000 applications, and we are processing more applications. And we have also adjusted the income and assets limits, and we have reminded those who wish to apply to submit their applications to us as early as possible. And we're going to have a comprehensive review of the WITS scheme towards the end of the year, which we have undertaken, including the objectives, eligibility criteria, modus operandi, etc. And through various employment schemes, we have stepped up subsidies to, or enhanced subsidies, allowances payable to employers under the middle-aged or employment program for the middle-aged and the work orientation employment scheme, and so as to provide a greater incentive for employers. And in the first half of this year, we will set up a job center in Tung Chung, and in Yet Tung shopping arcade, we have identified a suitable location which will be attractive to local residents, which can also provide service to them.
By doing so, we hope that we can provide more services to people living in remote areas. As for the Standard Working Hours Committee, ever since its establishment in April last year, has been doing a lot of work. First of all, it has done some consultations, and it has been collecting data concerning working hours. And 2 groups have already been working in full swing, and we hope that by the end of this year, the work can be completed in the coming 12 months. You will hear a lot about the activities, and they will come into contact with different stakeholders, such as trade unions, chambers of commerce, etc. And also, there will be talks as well as seminars. Consultancy reports will also be compiled. There will also be analysis of relevant data. So there will be a lot of work for them. And I'm sure you're all very concerned about the continuous contract requirements. The LAB and our bureau have been working in this area. Actually, the issues involved are very complicated. We already had 1 round of discussion, and now we will be going back to the LAB for other rounds of discussions because it involves a lot of operational issues. The administration has been working hard. The LAB also hopes that we can forge consensus very soon, and then we will come back to this panel to report to members. As for statutory minimum wage, now last year on the 1st of May it was increased to $30 per hour. So it has improved the livelihood of people at the grassroots a lot. And for the lowest 10th percentile of workers, they have seen a pay increase of 4.3%, so this is doing well. As for construction industry safety, it is also something that we are facing because now we have a lot of infrastructural works, and also there are many minor works, for example, operation building bright, window maintenance, etc. So we are adopting a multi-pronged approach. Now for major projects, we are liaising with the relevant companies. So when they are planning the projects, we already join hands with them. We will step up our site inspection, and we will also help minor contractors. The Occupational Safety and Health Council will help them, and we will also step up our publicity and promotion as well as regulation so that we can ensure the utmost safety at our construction sites. And also we are all very concerned about paternity leave. We hope that in the 2nd quarter, that is before the summer holiday, we will be tabling the relevant bill at LegCo. We will be providing 3 days of paternity leave for prospective fathers. And we hope that if members do not have too many questions, then we can have the bill passed as soon as possible so that we can help the employees. Thank you, Secretary. Now each member will be given 5 minutes. Hon KWOK Wai-keung, Sin Chung Kai, Chung Kwok Chu, Mr. Peng Chen Yun Han, KWOK Wai-keung, Chen Kim Po, Leung Chi Chang, Tommy Chang, Yang Yu Chung, and I myself. First of all, Mr. Hon KWOK Wai-keung. Thank you, Chairman. I welcome the government's proposal concerning paternity leave. That is, it will be tabling the relevant law. And we have been waiting for this for years, and now the government eventually realizes it. Now, initially the government didn't want to legislate. It just implemented this in the civil service, but now it's willing to legislate. I'm glad about that. And I would like to ask a question about the offsetting of mandatory provident fund. I have also asked these questions at the public services panel, and the relevant secretary told me that I should ask you. Now, for the offsetting of MPF, and the money is used instead for the payments of severance pay and non-service payments. Now, what do you think about that? Will the government take the lead to act as a good employer? So for the contract staff in the civil service, maybe you should cancel this offsetting arrangement first. Lately, an employee of the land registry has came to me. He has worked there for 17 years. He's always been a contract members. And when contract members like this are or their employments are seized by the government, they would also be subject to this kind of offsetting arrangements. So would the government take the lead to cancel the offsetting arrangements first? And second, at the last term of LegCo, Secretary, you promised that you will be providing us with a reinstatement order. And we also talked about unifying 2 types of holidays. Now we have bank holidays and labor holidays. And for labor holidays, there are a few days less. So some workers have been asking for aligning the 2 types of holidays. Now, first of all, about the offsetting arrangements. And as you know, the CE, after his policy address, he has stated the government's position and has told the public what he's going to do. This is a very complicated issue. We understand the concerns of the employers and employees because this present arrangement is allowed by the law. We understand this, and we are going to handle this matter. We will listen to all sorts of views. So we are now trying our best to listen to all the stakeholders, what their views are, and then we will pull the wisdom of the mass. And also last time the other secretary also made it very clear this matter will be handled very seriously. We will look into it. Now, as to whether the civil service will take the lead, now I will have to talk to the secretary for civil service. I remember the meeting in last week, the secretary said that we will have to look at the legislation and see what the positioning is. As to whether the civil service will take the lead, I will go back and talk to the relevant secretary. As for reinstatement order, we have been talking about this for quite some time. So there are still some obstacles now, because in the course of drafting the law, the judiciary and the Secretary for Justice have seen some drafting problems. The judiciary and the LAB have some concerns because the LAB would have to, or the labor tribunal will have the final. We have to make the final judgment. So they are now looking at their concerns, and when these are smoothed out, we will come back to you as soon as possible. Now they are just looking at the drafting problems. Now, if some judges think that there are ambiguities in the law, then they don't know how to make a judgment. So we really have to attach importance to this. But the permanent secretary and the secretary have been looking at this very proactively. First, about aligning the 2 types of holidays, 17 days and 12 days. Now, the Labor Department earlier on asked the Census and Statistics Department to carry out a study. Maybe I can ask Mr. Chuck to answer this question. Yes, Commissioner. With regard to bank holidays and labor holidays, now we have asked the Census and Statistics Department to compile data for us. We are now in the process of analyzing such data. In early 2013, we have also looked at 12 areas in our region. And when it comes to statutory holiday, Hong Kong ranks 3rd. The first one is Malaysia, the second is Thailand. Now we have 2 types of holidays. First, bank holidays and labor holidays. Well, for Japan, Korea, and Taiwan, they also have the same practice. So now we are studying the issue. And our department is also very busy with paternity leave, so we will have to handle these later on. Well, Chairman, just one word. I hope the government will take the lead to implement or to abolish the offsetting arrangements in the civil service. Well, Chairman, I'm not a member of this panel, but I have questions concerning low-income subsidy. Now, I want to ask you a question about paragraph 10, 11, and 12 of your speech. That is about the traffic allowance. Now, would that be taken into account when you decide on the low-income allowance? So, will you give clearer definitions to both? And when you make the calculation, would this be taken into account? For the low-income allowance and traffic allowance, the relationship is like this. Now, for low-income allowance, we use a household as the basis for calculation. But for traffic allowance, now we adopt a two-track approach. Now, I've heard deputations' views. They hope that traffic allowances would not be touched. Now, because for some families, it would have a huge impact on them if we touch traffic allowances. So this is our initial thinking. Now, for the applicant himself, if he makes an application on a household basis, then he cannot apply for traffic allowances. But if there are other people who are working in his family, their family members can apply for traffic allowances. But all this would have to be calculated when we look at the income of the whole family. So now the threshold is up to $8,300, and if you work over 72 hours, this would be allowed. Now, because I've heard the views of many deputations. Now, so when you assess households for low-income allowance, if individual members of the family are receiving traffic allowance, then the traffic allowance would be taken into account when you assess their household income. Yes, individually we would take that into consideration, but we would allow a certain flexibility, and of course you cannot exceed the family income. Now, for a four-member family, it's $14,400. That's for 2012, and I think in 2013 it was more. So if you add that $600, if it exceeds that level, then you cannot get travel allowance. Because we had a lot of concerns from the deputations, and it was hoped that more opportunities can be given to the people. There are technical issues. So for your systems, well, they are all computer-based or not. So are these two schemes connected? So you call up the ID, you would know that a certain family is receiving certain types of allowances, right? Yes, that can be done. We cross-check materials, whether they are on CSSA, on disability allowance, old age allowance, all this can be seen. Yes, all these are under your bureau. But for traffic allowance, this is Labor Department, and for low-income allowance, it's under the SWD. So there's no problem concerning the exchange of data. We are doing this. Well, for traffic allowances has been implemented for over than 2 years. So we already have a system. We have already gotten all the approvals, and when applicants fill in the application form, they already know all this. So now you can take care of the three schemes, that is a traffic allowance, CSSA, and the future low-income allowance. So for any family member, whatever he's getting, you will have a thorough knowledge, right? Yes.
So, Secretary, what system we use to deal with the applications for the low-income working families allowance? Well, our preliminary idea is to engage the efficiency unit under the Chief Secretary's office. The you is currently responsible for the 1803 hotline, government hotline, and they will be liaising closely with the Labour and Welfare Bureau. So they'll need to increase manpower, right? Yes. Next, Mr. Hon KWOK Wai-keung. Thank you, Chairman. Now, the paper for Manpower Panel focuses on youth employment. And we have YETP, Youth Employment and Training Program, and Chief Potential. And for services sector, you have a pilot scheme for the beauty trade, and also a first hire then train pilot scheme. And we also are aware of a number of first hire then train pilot schemes, and these will be provided by the Labour Department. However, we also observe that many are related to the sub-degree programs. Many subsidiaries of tertiary institutes, open community colleges that provide programs for social welfare and care services. VTC as well. So I'm wondering how these can be collated in terms of technical training and youth employment, because under the Labour and Welfare Bureau there are a number of employment programs or employment support programs. However, there is also training course provided by universities, and there is no linkage in between. And this year there is also an avocation of career planning, and many NGOs will be taking this on as well. And I see these three are related, and there should be better coordination so as not to waste resources. For secondary school leavers, there might be, for those who wish to pursue university education, there are places. What about those taking up programs in social care, social welfare services? There is no bridging or linking for these places, and Secretary just mentioned that there will be a pilot scheme providing an additional 1,000 places. Are they linked to further studies? Because without coordination, I don't know what our younger people would think, and you'll be wasting resources. Secretary, on youth employment, there are two levels. The first level is provided by the Labour and Welfare Bureau. Funding will be given to training courses unrelated to academic qualifications. So, in fact, the VTC provides two paths. One is an academic path leading to award-bearing programs like diploma or higher diploma. This is under the Education Bureau's purview. As for the training aspect, we are responsible for them. For Form 5 or Form 6 school leavers, they may have employment difficulties, and we target those underprivileged youths, and we also in close liaison with the Education Bureau, and we're not talking about centralizing everything. We want to provide multiple pathways. And now you mentioned care services. We're targeting young people who graduate as Form 5 and Form 6 so that they can join the sector and undergo on-the-job training with subsidies given, so that 2 years later they can get an academic qualification in care services. Chairman, I understand Secretary is already repeating. If there is no discussion between the LWB and Education Bureau, if there is no room for discussion, it seems that they're doing the same thing without any bridging. That is a waste of, let's say, public resources, or even individually speaking, a waste of time, because for someone with a sub-degree, for sub-degree holders, what job can they get in the care sector? So yes, you may provide courses, but what job can they get after their graduation? And you are expanding the pilot scheme, covering 1,000 more places. So why don't you coordinate matters so that for young people joining the social welfare sector, they can have multiple pathways? I very often get the question whether they can only become social workers on graduation. So this is a problem, Secretary, and after going through the courses, they don't get a job. In fact, to supplement, after taking these courses, they can pursue further onto diploma courses, for example. What we do is to give them proper training so that they get prepared. But seems the Education Bureau for sub-degree holders, they don't have any prospect. Next, Mr. Poon Siu Ping. Thank you, Chairman. There is a paragraph in the policies address on occupational safety. Just now, Secretary mentioned that effort will be strengthened on education and prevention and enforcement on occupational safety. My question is this. In the election manifesto, the Chief Executive has undertaken to set up a task force on occupational safety to take on studies on injuries at work and also rehabilitation. Is the administration preparing to start a task force, as mentioned? Next, on WITS. Secretary already mentioned that in October 2014 a comprehensive review will be conducted, and in the coming February the income and asset limits will be adjusted concurrently with the adjustment mechanism. There should not be any means test for or income test for WITS. There should only be tests on asset limits. What about the amount? Is it still 600? Will there be adjusted in the near future? Because transportation fares have been adjusted a number of times, so will it be adjusted accordingly? Several questions. First, in the CE's election manifesto, yes, there is an undertaking that a representative group should be set up to look at high-risk occupational sectors and rehabilitation. Some advanced work will have to be done first because it's quite complex. We need to rationalize things among departments before we can formally commence the work of a task force. And work has been quite smooth, and Deputy Commissioner Mr. Ng can report because he is chairman of that group. And on WITS, Mr. Poon asked whether we'll adjust the $600 amount. We actually drew reference from the CNSD data on the basic transportation expenses for employees traveling across districts, on average, is around 430 to 480. We'll see if the figures are up to date in due course. And yet you see that is still somewhat lower than the 600. For those living in Tin Shui Wai, it's the journey is farther, and the WITS can help them in some regard. And for income test, we have a position to uphold. Resources are limited, so we don't intend to scrap the income test for the time being. But when we review comprehensively in October, we'll consider that, and I will invite Mr. Ng to speak more about that working group. Thank you. In fact, we have an interdepartmental group involving the HA, the Development Bureau, and other relevant sectors, say insurance sector and the insurance authority, in terms of occupational injuries, rehabilitation. We're trying to rationalize and allay all concerns, and we're trying to submit the report in the first quarter of this year to gauge the progress of the group. Any follow-up, Mr. Poon? So theoretically, the chief executive is going to honor his promise, and that this task force will be set up. Some solid recommendations will be given to the Executive Council. Next, Ms. Chen Yunhan. Secretary, obviously, on welfare, at our panel, we also agree that you have made some progress, including the low-income working families allowance. So these are good welfare initiatives. But in terms of labor initiatives, you're not doing a good job. We have been debating on the same issues again and again. And Secretary, I don't think it should be left on the shelf. MPF offsetting arrangement. Now the administration has promised to take on this, and what will be done? And on the WITS, you only mention that it will be done towards the end of the year. And if you want to really honor the promises given in the election manifesto, it should not only be verbal promises. You only have 5 minutes, so you're just repeating yourselves. Secretary, why is it that on social welfare you're willing to make progress, whereas for labor issues you are just dragging your feet? On standard working hours, that's the easiest question. We're now in January. You have almost 12 months. Will there be a concrete direction towards legislation? Don't tell us that we will have further studies until the end of your term. So, Secretary, make some progress. Or you can't ask Ms. Tam, your permanent secretary, to do everything. You should do more.
Secretary, well, when it comes to labor, well, we have been working very hard quietly. Well, for example, paternity leave. Well, you cannot just work quietly. You have to honor your words. Well, but we still have to work. But you have been working for a long time. Well, we are trying our best. We have been sweating. You can see that we really have been working very hard. Now, when it comes to offsetting, I do not have anything to add. The CE has already explained about the government's positions 4 to 5 times. The CE 2 days ago said that within his term, he would have to do more for grassroots. So in terms of welfare, there should be more things done. But in terms of labor, I think you still have a lot of work to do. So can you tell me exactly what's happening? So by the end of this year, there will be a decision on working hours. So what will happen? Now, there are two working groups. One is responsible for consultation. Yes, I'm very familiar with that. The other one is doing analysis. So by the end of the year, a report will be completed, and the report will be submitted to the Standard Working Hours Committee, and after analyzing it, it will be deciding on the future. I don't think this work will take 1 year. Now, maybe before July this year, you can give us a report or interim reports, and then by the end of the year we will hear the full report. Well, these are just very simple things. That's just a consultation and a study. They are very simple. You already have the relevant data. So can you give us an interim report in July and tell us what stage you are at? Now, don't just drag your feet and then at the end of the year you tell us that, oh, it's another year. Well, you have been dragging your feet, Secretary. How about an interim report? Well, the SWHC is very representative. There are representatives from the academia, from employers, from workers, etc. But of course, your concerns will be relayed to them. That is, you want an interim report. But when it comes to the statistics on working hours, there is still contracting out exercise. Well, we are only in January. How come by the middle of this year you cannot do this? It is not that difficult to compile statistics. Our last term government was doing that as well. Well, due to the time constraint, Secretary, are you telling us that you will not do it? Well, I will reflect your views to the SWHC. Mr. Kwok, Chairman, well, they have been working quietly, but we need a result. Ask them to come back in July. Now, you've heard him. They will come back to report to us what the SWHC's view is. Kwok Wai-keung, first question is about apprentices and YETP, and pay allowance will be increased so that more young people can be trained. I think this is a good direction. Now, for those who are in sub-degree programs, they need attachments, but they are not being paid for this kind of attachment programs, so they have been turned into cheap labor. Has the government considered about this? So for these kind of students, you should give them attachment allowance. I have studied several programs, and I've seen the problem. Of course, I'm not trying to get the money. I'm just talking about the full-time sub-degree students. And also for apprenticeship programs, you will be increasing the allowance. That is good. But for their particular trades, if the remuneration is not improved, then after these trainees graduate, how many of them would like to remain in that trade? Now, we have always been talking about this, that is, the pays in these trades would have to be bettered. Otherwise, the young people would not be willing to work in these fields. And thirdly, the Labor Department has been charging employers for a supplementary labor scheme. But for mainland or mainland talents or talents from other places that are coming to work in Hong Kong, I think there are about 80,000 of them in Hong Kong. Last time the Secretary told us that the direction in this area was different. So there are still a lot of differences. So for supplementary labor scheme, because they are technical people, then the employers would have to be charged. But for the talent programs, because these people have high academic attainments, then there will not be any charge for the employers. So can the Secretary tell us what he's going to do about this? Well, Mr. Kwok's first question is about sub-degree and degree students and their attachment allowance. Now, it depends on whether the employers are working under one of our schemes. For example, for sub-degree students, now VTC now offers some sub-degree programs. So if they fall under a certain program, then they can be subsidized. For example, the YETP, so that they have to fall into one of your programs, right? So how about social work? Well, it's very difficult for us to draw lines here or there. For many trades or professions, there are traineeship programs. And for VTC courses, many of the students would have to be trainees. So sometimes trainee allowances will be given. Later on, the Secretary of Education will give you more information. Now, the VTC has a sum of money. I think the Education Bureau will know about that. Well, with this sum of money, it actually targets several trades. For example, elevator maintenance, vehicle maintenance, etc. So VTC is a training organization. Now, allowances are given to VTC, and this will last for 4 years. And we will encourage employers to employ fresh graduates in this area. As for foreign domestic helpers levy, actually there's a background. For $400, actually is packed with the VTC. Now we get the $400 levy to subsidize the work of EMB or ERB employees retraining board, so that they can train up local workers. Now, for sub-degree graduates, their unemployment rate is higher than secondary school leavers. And for your program importing talents, actually the so-called imported talents are actually fighting for job opportunities with sub-degree graduates. I'm happy that a number of pilot schemes are now launched under YETP. Now, these programs do not only help young people, they also help the industries that find it difficult to recruit people. For example, the residential care homes for elderly, etc. So if the response is good, you will extend this program to other healthcare sectors. Well, in Hong Kong, many industries find it difficult to recruit people. For example, construction industry and transport industry. Now, lately, the green minibus sector has been talking to me. Now many of the drivers are in their 60s, and not many young people would like to join the trade. So will the government be helping them to train up drivers? And what sectors are the government talking to at the moment concerning this kind of youth training? And also for working holiday scheme, now we are cooperating with 9 countries, and they 8 of them ask the young people to take out medical insurance before they set off. Australia, well, many of our young people will go to Australia for this purpose, but Australia does not ask for medical insurance. So what will happen to our young people if they have accidents or fall ill in Australia? Now, first about manpower, and second, Mr. KWOK will answer the questions concerning insurance and working holiday scheme. As for construction and transport industries, we understand that there is a shortage of manpower. As for construction industry, we have already adopted a multi-pronged approach. We have been providing new training programs, and we also encourage people from South Asia or of South Asian ethnicity to join the trade. And also on construction sites, now we are installing showers so that the situation can be improved, and young people after a day of work, they can take a shower and then go out. So employers have been changing their mindsets because now they want to attract more people. So other than increasing the pay, they should also be improving the work environment. As for transport industry, if there is a need, the ELB can arrange for some training courses. But the problem is whether the young people are willing to become drivers. There is another problem. Now, we have the resources to provide training, and ELB is willing to tailor-make programs. Now, if some employers say that, well, I want to employ people, but I do not have the resources to provide them with training, then we can provide this sort of training. And it's employment pact. That is, after they graduate, there will be a job waiting for them. Commissioner, about the WHS insurance. As for European countries, they do not require the participants to take out insurance, but we encourage participants to buy insurance before they set off. Well, as for our department, we have not received any requests for assistance overseas in this regard. How about the shortage of minibus drivers? Well, there are two factors. Now, of course, if the pay is higher, more people will join the trade. And if the pay is not enough, then you cannot help them, right? How can you encourage more people to become drivers? But you can help them in the area of training, right? That's right. We can help in training. Now, we encourage employers to give market rates to the employees. And we need to rely on the market drive, so we cannot do much about it, but we are very willing to provide training opportunities. Mr. Leung Chi-Chang? In Hong Kong, we do not only have the shortage of manpower problem in minibus, and at many grassroots levels, we see the same problem. The unemployment rate in Hong Kong is still on the low side. However, for young people, the unemployment rate is high. Well, does it mean that the young people are not willing to work? Well, I don't think so. But when young people look for jobs, it seems that they do not find many jobs suitable for them. So how can a government help them in this regard? Well, the government has a lot of programs, for example, YES resources centers, and there are training programs targeting young people. However, well, of course, some young people are willing to take part in these programs, but there are still some that are reluctant. So can the government do more? First of all, the government needs to set up more resources centers in different districts. So it's like casting the net wider so that more young people can get support. So when they go for job interviews or look for jobs, they would stand a better chance. And also, in some NGOs, there are activities coordinators, but this year the government has not extended their contracts. Now, if this contract staff are not turned into permanent staff, then they would have to be dismissed. Mr. Hon KWOK Wai-keung said that, well, at the end of the day, they may not become social worker. However, although the pay is not high, many of them are working happily in these NGO centers. So why is the government cutting this program? I don't understand the government's policy. On one hand, you say that you would need to do something to help the young people. On the other hand, you take the lead to cut these places. I've heard that there are over 1,000 places like this that will be cut. How has the government looked into this? How many young people will lose their job because of this?
It's actually 2,100, so the number is quite large. So can the administration explain more clearly what can be done to help our young people with their employment? Thank you, Mr. Leung, for your questions. On the first point about youth employment, youth unemployment rate has significantly increased over the past few months. The overall employment rate is 3.2%, but for unemployment rate for youths between 15 and 24 is 8.8%, is relatively lower than before. We used to have double-digit figures. Last quarter it was 10.1%. Now it's just 8.8%. For the youngest group between 15 and 19, who should be at school, but for some various reasons are available in the job market, is 11.5%, and for those below 18 is 30%. So for those between 19 and 24 is around 8.4%, some to 24,000, altogether 28,800. So we treasure all young people. They are our future. So we have all sorts of training programs, YETP, etc. We want to give them opportunities, and we will continue to enhance our programs and enhance publicity so that they know these services are available for them, to help them create multiple pathways. Activity coordinators. It's also the aspiration of some young people. Why is it cut this year? The background is that several years ago, when the economy was not good, the administration provided 3,000 such places in the welfare sector. And it's time limited, it's on a 1-year basis. It's for them to equip themselves to join the job market again, instead of staying on in the social welfare sector. It was a short-term measure to alleviate unemployment. Next, Mr. Tommy Zhang. Thank you, Chairman. I was 2 or 3 minutes late. I want to ask if we are going to have a special meeting on foreign domestic helpers. Yes, we will also receive deputations. Well, we are going to discuss this item soon, but I'd like to make some suggestions on behalf of the Liberal Party for Secretary's consideration. The Liberal Party is of the view that, first of all, for agencies, you should introduce a licensing mechanism and point system, and there should be examinations for their licenses. And recently, the Labour Department has been criticized for adopting a very low threshold. Any application will be entertained. I don't know whether it is the case. And non-compliant agencies should be heavily penalized to protect the interests of helpers and employers. In Singapore, they have a very comprehensive education policy, and training should also be provided. We should consider that so as to protect the interests of both parties. Coming back to this year's policy address, little is mentioned about employment. Of course, there is the low-income working families allowance. Liberal Party has advocated the low-income subsidy for many years, way before we had a statutory minimum wage, so that we won't always take money out of employers' pockets. And we agree that on top of statutory minimum wage, you should have low-income allowance for those poor families. And I was away after hearing Secretary's reply for some time. There were questions on paternity leave, and that we need to enact legislation for a 3-day paternity leave, but it will soon turn into 3 days, from 3 days to 7 days, 10 days, a month, or even 6 months, and then there will be questions on why we don't follow the Canadian example, and this is really concern shared by employers. And also there was a question on the offsetting arrangements for MPF. And you could say that it's a model agreed on by all three parties during the British colonial rule. We agree that we had the MPF and we didn't need other arrangements. And now you're suggesting that the offsetting arrangement be scrapped. Is really a big concern of employers. Recently, during luncheons, when I had lunch with employers, we did not discuss constitutional reforms. Instead, they asked when there will be a demonstration or march, and they have to be notified. And perhaps here I am the only one representing the employers, although I myself can't be regarded as an employer. And I see my colleagues nodding at your replies. And how can you tell SMEs to invest more? And there are all sorts of cuts, the standard working hours, and of course you didn't agree. And what about importation of labor? There is a shortage of manpower across all sectors. So what are you waiting for? The Liberal Party make this objective observation. You want to increase housing production and also public rental housing. There should be more labor imported, since there is manpower shortage in the construction industry. Body gestures, yes, I do have body gestures to show that. We have schemes in the construction industry, and also for specific industries we allow importation of labor. Next, Mr. Leung Yu-jung. Although the unemployment rate is quite low on labor importation, employees will definitely object to the idea, because this will deprive employees of their rights, including their wages and their benefits. So a consensus must be reached with the labor sector first. Secretary, on youth employment, many members already asked questions on this topic, and I'd like to follow up on activity coordinators. You explain that it's a short-term position for them to be integrated into society as soon as possible, but in fact they have already integrated into society. They have been in the post for 4 or 5 years. They are dedicated, and this is also their aspiration. And there is also a side effect, in the sense that those centers can benefit from their effort. So you don't need to impose anything mandatory. It can be done through natural wastage if you want to cut posts. Thirdly, women's potential should be unleashed, according to you. But how can we do that? Women have to take care of their children, and even if they want to join the workforce, they need to take care of their children. Child care services should be enhanced. And in the policy address, in terms of community nannies, the age limit is now lifted to 9 years, but it's still not sufficient. Children should not be left alone at home without supervision, and children means those aged up to 15. So what about those between 9 and 15? And also, you'd like to see elderly people rejoining the workforce, and legislation, as you said, would be difficult. Publicity should be enhanced instead to encourage elderly people to work. And I tell you that this is not efficient, even with publicity. this won't be effective in unleashing the potential and allow them to join the workforce. So, are you going to conduct a study to see if publicity is effective? If not, will there be legislation to ensure that elderly people can rejoin the job market? In fact, last week I replied to all these questions at the panel on welfare services. But let me reply once again. For activity coordinators is a very short-term position for 1 year for them to get prepared to rejoin the job market. In fact, there are many positions available for young people, not only in the social welfare sector, but in other sectors as well. If they step out, they can see great future. Secondly, for these organizations, they have lump sum grant, and they can employ other employees flexibly, so they can do this by natural wastage, and there are also support programs to help them. In fact, there are a lot of vacancies in the job market available to young people. If they are really minded to work, we have platforms, we have referral services to help them. They will not be left alone. We have comprehensive support. As long as they speak out, they can be assisted. But why is it that if they love this job, why can't they stay on? Instead, you're asking them to change jobs. Because we said already that this is a time-limited temporary position. We do not interfere with the recruitment of staff for these organizations. For young people who want to stay, there are positions for them to stay on. Not all of them leave. What we do is that we don't leave them alone. If they need anything, we'll help them with training or employment. Why don't you adopt natural wastage instead of compelling them to leave? We're not compelling them to leave their posts. From the start, we already reiterated that this is a short-term position, but some work for 4 to 5 years. Now, we understand that the unemployment rate is 3.2%. We're at full employment, and there is manpower shortage across all sectors. As long as you want to get a job, there is no problem. Next, Mr. Leung Kwok-ho, Chairman. On the offsetting arrangement, many members, including FTU members, asked you to be a good employer. And that's right. You are the leader, you're the largest employer in Hong Kong, and you have developed a mechanism to cut down the benefits for civil servants. You used to have a civil provident fund, you now have MPF, and is it ethical? You are the largest employer, and you occupy you take up a large share in the market, including statutory bodies as well. So for employees' benefits, it's now been reduced from civil provident fund to MPF, and the offsetting arrangements have not been adjusted for over a decade. So it's like a rotten orange, and you just eat that orange first. It's rotten. It's almost totally rotten with a stink, and nothing's changed. Mr. Matthew Cheung, when MPF was introduced in year 2000, in terms of the government's surplus and fiscal reserves, and the Gini coefficient, how do we fare now? The rich gets more richer, and the poor gets poorer. When we have staff here who do not wish to get promoted because there are two systems, they like to follow the older system, because even if they jump to a higher rank under the new system, their benefits will be worse. So is there a need to review this?
Oh, I'll ask you a very simple question now. You are a member of the cabinet. do you have the responsibility to remind the CE that he should be more ethical, because the government is the biggest employer in Hong Kong? So how can you allow the civil service pay and benefits to deteriorate? I would like to thank Mr. Leung's questions. Now, earlier on, I answered another member on the same question. That's a question from Mr. Hon KWOK Wai-keung. Now, will the government take the lead to do this? Well, because this will have far-reaching effects. If the government does not take the lead, where is your leadership? You have been talking about leadership all the time, and you're different from the last governments. But now you are far away from that goal. And you are not doing anything for universal pension, and you want to import foreign laborers. And I would like to ask you about the number. When you answer Mr. Leung Yu-jung, you said you talk about temporary jobs for young people so that they can have more confidence. So talking about that 3.2%, well, actually these people are unemployed because those are just temporary jobs. Well, many years ago, you took the civil service entrance examinations, right? You were a very clever person. And Mr. Chung, if your boss at that time told you that you would just be given a 1-year contract and that post will only last for 1 year, would you take up that job? You would think that's a waste of time, right? Now you are promoted to such a high position. So for the temporary jobs, they are just there to help the number of unemployment be reduced. So what is the government doing? Let the Secretary answer the question first. For activity coordinators, it was because at that time the economic environment was poor, there was an employment problem, so we provided this kind of job so that the young people could equip themselves, and when the economy recovers, they can join the labor markets. Now economy has recovered, there are a lot of jobs. But even though they join the government, you just give them contract jobs. So what's your next question? Is it about contract staff? Would the offsetting arrangement be abolished? Chairman, I already answered this question 3 times. I'm willing to go back and talk to the government about this, but there are a lot of problems involved. Mr. Leung Kwok Hong, he's already explained about that. Ms. An Chang. Thank you, Chairman. Secretary, now in the policy address, the ECE mentioned providing more plans for young people so that they can move upward. And he also talked about life planning. In January, I moved a motion on providing young people with comprehensive support. In the policy address, I see 2 points which are like responses to our request. But I hope the Secretary can look into them in greater details. First of all, we mentioned that we should help secondary school students before they enter the labor market. They should know more about their future career path. Now, if they go into the labor market, what kind of jobs are available for their choice? What's the promotion letter? Now, if they continue to study, what subjects should they choose? Of course, they have to look at the market 5 years after their graduation. Now, many undergraduates find that there is a mismatch. Sometimes when they find a job, that job has nothing to do with the subject they study, or they are not interested in that type of job. So for some young people, if they do not continue their studies, they can also join the job market. And in the CE's policy address, he mentioned that a chef won an international prize. I think that's very impressive. Now, the Education Bureau now has a qualification framework, but I've heard a lot of comments about it. For example, people working for beauty parlors or hairdressers, well, after they've got a certain qualification, they think that's not useful. And if they look for a job, nobody cares about their QF qualification. And if they are promoted from grade 1 to grade 2 or grade 3, when actually they do not see such a ladder in the system. So about helping students so that they can identify their future career path, and also about helping graduates so that they can see the promotion ladder clearly. Well, do you think we can have an opportunity to really look into that? Now, the LWB and the EB can form a joint committee to look into this. Ms. Chiang? Later on, the Secretary for Education will be here to talk about qualification framework. So about grade 1, grade 2, or things like that, you can later ask the Secretary for Education. And next time we will also have an agenda item on youth employment. Well, Secretary, life planning. Yes, resources are now given to schools, and in each school, a teacher will be responsible for this. So in a policy address, a lot of resources have been earmarked for young people. I would like to follow up. I hope that later on you can send a colleague to talk to us so that we can get more details from him. And how are we going to help young people? For example, if he is a young chef, he should feel that this is a respected profession and he would have a very bright future. And that goes the same for construction site workers. Now, earlier on, there were posts in elderly homes for young people. So you should give the young people this kind of feeling. That is, even working for elderly homes, they would have a very good career path. Yes, Secretary, please consider Ms. N. Chang's suggestion. That is, you should promote the possible image of different trades. Chairman, for this policy address, when it comes to poverty alleviation or environmental protection, housing, land supply, yes, this government is attaching more importance to these areas when it's compared with the last governments. But the middle class has been ignored. Well, the middle class won't say that you have not done anything in housing or environmental protection. Yes, you've done something in those areas. So why do the middle class think that they are ignored? Well, they do not need you to alleviate their poverty because they are not really in poverty. But they need to work for very long hours, and after their work, they don't have enough time to spend with their children, and they do not have retirement protection. Well, at this particular moment, I do not need your help. So I cannot say that, well, in terms of education, you haven't done anything. Yes, you've been also doing a lot about environmental protection. However, the middle class are working for more than 10 hours a day, and we only get 24 hours a day. So for 10 hours a day, they have to work very hard, and they don't see the government doing anything in this regard, and that's why they're angry. So are they making 10,000? Even if they're making $10,000 or $40,000 a month, is the same, and they even have to work on Sunday. In particular, now service industry is most important. So many people or many members know that in terms of welfare you have done something, but how about labor? And how about employees' rights? We are not talking about the grassroots. We are talking about middle-class employees. You have not done anything for them. So my question is, under such circumstances, in the coming year, with regard to statutory minimum wage, the MPF offsetting arrangements, and the 418 issue, in the coming year, what are you going to do about them? Other than continuing discussion, what else will you do? And also about the activity coordinators. I asked them, now you've been doing this for 3 years, but your salary is still $9,000. Why are you doing this? Now, if you go to work for a retail shop, you can make $11,000 a month. Now, they say that because they are interested in a job. So, government representative, you have to know this. You are not giving alms. You are having this. You are providing these jobs, and young people enjoy them. So if they are removed, who are going to help in these NGO centers? Now we already have the policy addressed. So how about the budget? Can the budget help us? Because these young people really want to work in the social welfare sector. And so please do something so that they can remain in the industry. As for the activity coordinators, actually we're trying a lot to help them. For example, they are not only working in the elderly homes, they are also working in the rehabilitation homes, and that's a very broad area. So if anyone's willing to work in the social welfare sector, there are still a lot of opportunities, and they can continue to work in the social welfare sector. This is very important. We have been making a lot of efforts. We try to give them the most opportunities. And you said that in terms of labor, there is no progress in this year. However, we have to strike a balance among the interests of different stakeholders, that is employers and employees. And we have to look at the overall economic development of Hong Kong. But we need time to prepare, and we need to collect data. For SMW, the preparatory period was as long as 8 to 10 years. So please give us some time and space. And just now we talk about universal retirement protection. Now we have an expert team doing this, and it's led by Professor Zhao Wing-sun. In the middle of this year, a report will be given to the Poverty Commission. Secretary, in this year, what do you think you can achieve? Well, that is the 3-day paid paternity leave. Mr. Albert Ho, I have some questions about law, and they are related to labor rights. First, about accident compensation. There is a type of compensation called bereavement compensation. In the Fatal Accidents Ordinance, it is stipulated that the amount should be $70,000. I remember it's 1997. Mr. Lee Chuk-yan and I moved a motion, and it was passed by LegCo, and it was raised to $150,000. And that was a private member bill. But from 97 up to now, many years have passed, but this amount has never been adjusted. So you don't have to give me an answer right away. Please go back and check. Otherwise, we will have to do something about it. As for bereavement compensation, we have a mechanism where we'll conduct a yearly review, we will look at inflation, etc. It has been adjusted upwards. For example, pneumoconiosis, there have been different arrangements. But for employees' compensation ordinance, well, you are talking about that particular provision. That's Fatal Accidents Ordinance. It's about common law damages. Maybe the Commissioner for Labor can answer that question. Mr. Ng, any supplements? I'll go back and look at it. We will have to clarify whether it's under the Employment Compensation Ordinance. No, it's under the Fatal Accident Ordinance. Yes, it's not employees' compensation. But if there is an industrial accident or injury, and if there's a common law damage, then this is a fixed rates compensation. There has been no adjustment since 1997. I'm very clear about that. I'll go back and look at it and then give us an answer in writing. If you do not do anything, I will do something.
The second question about the insolvency fund compensation. The protection covers severance payment, long service payment, including MPF contribution. But if the employer's contribution is in default, this is missing. And this is something that employees should be entitled to. Why is it that the fund doesn't cover it? I defer to Deputy Commissioner. Under the Insolvency Protection Fund, if the employee doesn't receive the wages that are entitled, it's covered. As for MPF contribution, employer's contribution, at present, the fund doesn't cover any MPF employer's contribution in arrears. For MPF, there is 5% employees' contribution. As for the 5% employers' contribution, this is what the employees are entitled. These are two different situations. Yes, the contribution hasn't been made, and why doesn't the fund cover this aspect as well? Say if the wages are 10,000, if it's in arrears, then it's wage default. As for the $500, it's given the contribution given to the MPFA. And I think Mr. Albert Ho is talking about the loophole, because the fund only covers any wage default, and the 5% contribution is not a wage default. And we believe that this calls for amendment in the legislation. And there is also a compensation fund, and the scope should be wider so that a minimum amount can be paid in compensation. The MPFA will lodge a claim for the contributions in arrears on their behalf, but not under this fund, right? If under the labor laws an award has been given at present, if the employer is missing, and if a bankruptcy petition has to be filed, no legal aid can be provided. Is that right? I mean, in applying for bankruptcy. Yes, there is legal aid as long as the means test can be met. And still, the MPF cannot be resolved because nobody is paying the minimum amount of compensation. So would the administration think about that? Because no fund at present covers any contributions and in arrears. In fact, the protection of wages on the insolvency fund is a matter of what the scope is. The employees offered service, and is part of what they should get as reward. So lastly, a brief question from me. Just now, many questions were on were targeted at Labor Secretary, because it seems Labor and Welfare Bureau now only focus on welfare instead of labor. It's nothing to do with you. It's to do with the chief executive. He hasn't honored his promises, and all these are big promises. If we need to wait for the work of various groups to be completed in 2014, to be followed by reports in 2015, that means within CY Leung's administration, no legislation can be enacted. The other promise is scrapping the MPF offsetting arrangement. So can you give us a timetable how long the studies would last? I disagree strongly that we need further studies, because when the CY Leung wrote his election manifesto, all studies were completed, and now because of pressure from the business sector, he is retracting. So how long would these studies last? The second question is on WITS. For asset limit for an individual is 79,500. As for income limit or asset limit on a household basis, well, it's roughly that of the PRH asset limit. That's for an individual 210,000. So will your criteria be adjusted to peg them to the PRH limits? Secretary, the administration has no intention to retract from any promises. As for the standard working hours, we have had frequent meetings, and the PS and the Commissioner, they're also members of that group. They are working pragmatically. But you admit, as you said before, Secretary, that the report won't be ready by the end of 2015. The reports will be submitted by the two working groups by the end of 2015 for the board to consider. And they're trying to compress the timetable. As I repeat a number of times, for MPF offsetting arrangements, they will consider this issue, and will work closely in this regard. As for WITS, in October, we are going to conduct a comprehensive review, and we will look into matters holistically, including the age and the eligibility criteria, etc. And your views will be considered. I hope that for WITS, the limits can be adjusted as soon as possible. As for MPF contributions default, you haven't told us the timetable when the studies will be completed, and you two are in close liaison with and can you tell us when you can give us a report? And is it the case that the business sector is ruling Hong Kong? We will work closely with Mr. Chan, CEO, and give you a reply in due course. Well, I must say I'm disappointed since you haven't told me anything about a timetable for your studies. All right, thank you, colleagues from the Labour and Welfare Bureau. We are going to invite the colleagues from Education Bureau to brief us on qualifications framework. Thank you, Secretary. So let's welcome Secretary for Education and his team from the Education Bureau. Thank you, Secretary for Education, for coming here together with his team, Ms. Michelle Lee and Ms. Pak Vin Young. So, over to you, Secretary. Your briefing. Thank you, Chairman. In the 2014 policy address, one major focus is nurturing the next generation. There are education initiatives and policies in this regard. Today, I'd like to focus on qualifications framework. In 2008, when the administration introduced the qualification framework, we encourage lifelong learning and enhancing the quality, professionalism, and competitiveness of the labor force in Hong Kong. So far, we have established the industry training advisory committees for 19 sectors, and the practitioners in relevant sectors account for 46% of the total workforce in Hong Kong. 14 ITACs have set down the SES specification of competency standards to set down the competency standards of various sectors. And the QF has expanded to 8 sectors. Apart from that, the Financial Secretary also announced in the financial year 2013-14 that there will be an annual allocation of $10 million to support the ITACs in rolling out new initiatives to further enhance the knowledge and skills of the practitioners in various sectors and to enhance their competitiveness in the job market. We are assisting the ITACs in rolling out the relative initiatives. We will continue to publicize and promote the work of the qualifications framework and to build liaisons with the relevant QF bodies and quality assurance authorities to enhance mutual understanding and trust and to facilitate cooperation. In 2007, the Finance Committee of the LegCo approved a funding of $280 million to roll out a time-limited qualifications framework subsidy schemes or support schemes since 2008 to benefit various stakeholders. In 2011, we rolled out improvement measures on the relevant schemes and relaxed the operational criteria. And we received good response from education and training institutions, and the subsidies amounts have also increased. The schemes are expected to end later this year, and owing to the importance of the QFSS to continuous education, the Chief Executive announced in the Policy Address 2014 that a $1 billion will be allocated to set up a fund, the qualifications, the QF fund, and the investment return will be used to support the continuous development of the QF. And we are going to enhance and continue with the various QFSS. And secondly, we will also support the ITACs and also any studies plans related to QF and also public education for it to gain wider acceptance. And we will reorganize existing or restructure existing schemes and relax some operational criteria, including the coverage and level of subsidies, so that more practitioners and organizations can benefit from it. And the existing support schemes will continue till the setting up of the QF fund. Secondly, we propose giving subsidies for the ITACs to engage experts or education or training institutions to set down the qualifications, to attract newcomers to undergo studies and enhance their skills. And to further the development of QF, we will conduct regularly research and studies. For example, we are developing a set of policies and principles for the transfer and accumulation of points under the QF system, and this will also, the fund will also further promote or provide financial support for QF promoting agencies. We're going to set up a steering committee on QF which will take or offer advice to the Secretary for Education on the policy, strategy and management of QF. And we're going to submit the funding proposal to Finance Committee later this year, subject to members' objections. We welcome views. We have 3 members, Ms. Ann Chang, and also 2 other members waiting to ask questions. And there is also a point, a funding proposal will be submitted to Finance Committee later, and we should decide whether this can go ahead to the Finance Committee or he should report back to the panel. Ms. Ann Chang. Thank you, Chairman. So the administration will continue its work on education and enhancing the qualifications framework. Secretary, we received proposals from various sectors. Now, there are 7 levels in the qualifications framework. If they're on level 1, how can they go up from level 1 to level 2 and onwards? Are there clear criteria? Can this be done?
And how can you make the QF more acceptable? Now, for example, if you get a certificate or pass a certain examination in the beauty service area, but this kind of qualification does not help the relevant practitioner. So it seems that these QL or QF are not recognized by many members of the trade, or they are not too acceptable. So can the Education Bureau do this work alone, or you should join hands with the LWB? Because this involves the apprenticeship ordinance, and that's under the Labor Department. I am supportive of the QF, and as the CE said, this will help a lot of young people because this open up another path for them other than university. So if you're a technician, your apprenticeship, you can still move up along your career path. And actually, some people who are from this background are actually making more money than university graduates. So I would like to ask you about 2 points. First of all, how can employers recognize the QF more? And second, how does a person move up from level 1 to level 2, 3 in the QF? Thank you. There are 2 very important points. The member is right about the recognition of a qualification. We have to look at its design, its credibility, and also its acceptance by the relevant industry. So that's why we have the industry training advisory committees. They work hand in hand with the different trades. Now we have already set up 19 ITACs, and they have already designed the promotion ladder. Now we have looked at past experience, and some things have already been achieved. So that's why we are trying to promote this more comprehensively. So that's why we need to set up the QF fund. Now maybe Ms. Michelle Lee, the Deputy Secretary, can answer the other questions. First of all, about promotion and recognition. Now we have a recognition of prior learning mechanism. So practitioners can get level 1 to 4 qualifications through recognition of prior learning. And second, now we are looking at this. That is, now we want to adopt a multi-exit and entrance mechanism so as to ensure that different bodies would recognize different qualifications. In other words, the practitioners do not have to repeat a certain course that they have taken before. So now people who are holding level 2 recognitions, they can study courses for level 3. So we have recognized the certificates when they were apprentices. We also hope that BTC and ELB can work together more closely so that in a gradual manner their courses can be coordinated better, and there will be mutual recognitions. And the ITACs have covered all kinds of members, for example, employers. So some employers have already incorporated QT into their recruitment and promotion. For example, logistics management, they have different levels and their own hierarchy. So when they recruit people and when they promote employees, they would adhere to the QF. We will continue our work in this area. Now, due to the time constraints, well, we should stick closer to the 5-minute rule, and I will also extend this meeting by 15 minutes because at 10:45 there will be another meeting. It would be great if you would use less than 5 minutes. We'll still have 5 members. Mr. Hon KWOK Wai-keung. Thank you, Chairman. As for QF, well, we've been talking about it for several years. But for the ordinary people, including young people, it seems that they don't know too much about it. Well, actually, this provides an alternative path for young people. If they are not going into universities, then they can take some other courses and they can obtain some qualifications, and then they can move up from level 1 to level 7 in the QF. But over the past few years, what was the transparency like? Did the public know about it? And we have been talking a lot about this. That is, how well is the QF recognized? What does the government view it? Now, if you are at a certain level in the QF, how can you enter the civil service? How well does the government recognize it? And how does the private sector, or how do the private sector and NGO look at it? Now, you want the employers to recognize these qualifications. Otherwise, these qualifications are useless. And is it fair? For those ITACs, when I look at their compositions, it seems to me that not many employees are represented. Most of the members are employers and academics. And can the user's voice be heard? And if the QF, well, I'm afraid that at the end of the day, the QF will be controlling everything. And for people who are not under the QF, they will be deprived. They may be given the lowest pay. And employers are now very influential in this whole system. This is what I am most afraid of. But if there are more recognitions in the future, then those people who are not recognized, they will be impacted on. And if the prior learning is not recognized, then they will be excluded. I'm very worried. Now, from 2014 onwards, each year the FS will give it $10 million. So in total, there will be $60 million involved. Can you tell us how this money will be spent? So transparency, recognition, employee participation, and $60 million. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Chairman. There are two very important points. Now, Mr. Chang has asked a series of questions. These are all very serious and practical questions. Now, when we come into contact with the ITACs, we understand that these are actually issues they're looking at. Now, in the past few years, well, they think that the QF has been functional, and employers have accepted this system. At least the promotion ladder is quite clear. And there are trainings that are packed to the QF, and also is linked to the academic structure. So that's why we believe that the QF should be launched comprehensively. In the past, we just had some piecemeal initiatives, but now we want to do it more comprehensively. But we need to look carefully at certain areas. So that's why detailed studies will be carried out. We hope that in the course of doing this, we would also be looking at recognition level. Well, big corporations and SMEs are also involved. SMEs' views are also heard through the ITACs. So we will not rushing through things. We will be very prudent. So all these are our concerns. Maybe the Deputy Secretary can also answer the questions. I will also ask some questions, and I will also give them time to respond. Mr. James Ho, I just want to express my view. Now, for this kind of framework, when it's set up, there are benefits because there is a objective system so that you would understand that in different trades, what's the levels of the members are, and the employers can refer to this objective standard when they try to recruit people. Yes, I understand the benefits of the framework. However, for this type of framework is actually very powerful. It can decide on your license and even your livelihood. So now you definitely have to go through the system to get recognition, and then you can get a job which suits your capability. And if you are excluded unreasonably or unfairly, then you will be in huge trouble. Now, if you accidentally offended a person, then you may lose your job. I am worried about this. Now, we are in a free society. The best thing about it is that we do not have to rely on the government. We can work on our own. But if you have this kind of system, then everybody has to be controlled by this system. This is what I'm worried about. Please give us more data. How does this kind of system operate in other countries? Have you learned from other jurisdictions? And second, other than the QF, well, in the QF, whether there's a check and balance mechanism. Mr. Chang also talked about this. Will some people be excluded from this system? Now, for different trades, different members sitting on the ITACs. There are representatives from big corporations, from SMEs, and there are also individual members. Now, employees are also taking part in this.
Well,
when I look at other countries, well, we have made reference to other countries, for example, Scotland. Now, if the program is more mature, then there will be more cooperations. And it's also part of manpower planning. If some people are excluded, then the whole trade will be jeopardized. So there would not be monopolization. And nothing bad has happened to the QFs in other countries. It is because all types of members of an industry can take part. Deputy Secretary, now for the ITACs, some members come from the labor sector or from trade unions. In other words, the ITACs have all sorts of members, employers, employees, different professional bodies, and they would negotiate together. So we hope that we can gather views from all stakeholders. As for the present QF, is a voluntary system. It is not like the mainland. That is, you definitely need a license before you can get a job. So we're just helping the trades and the practitioners to understand understand more about the promotion ladder. So it is not a strict system. That is, you definitely need to have a certain license before you can work for a certain job other than statutory posts. So this system will not exclude people. We just want employers and employees to understand better the skills and techniques required for a certain trade. So that's why we are also promoting training.
Well, do pay attention to this point about exclusion. Of course, there is participation on a voluntary basis and participation by trade associations. I'm sorry, Dr. Ann Chang, you raised your hand, but we have no time. Please follow up on it on other occasions. Next, Mr. Tan Ka-pil. 9,022 applications have been made for QF, and 60% are from property management sector. Some may be security guards, some may be clerical staff. Well, this sector is favoring this QF. Does it mean that apart from the enhancement of qualifications, they can also receive pay rise? Or is it the case that in future all property management companies are required to recruit security guards with the QF qualifications? So it's a matter of exclusion or really enhancement of qualifications. And also we received some complaints on we received some complaints about sub-degree programs and the allowances or subsidies or even grants given to some study programs. And some of them require that the students undertake further studies in order to receive bursaries. And the recent complaint I received is about the social worker program. So the girl studied in a program, and then 2 years later she was supposed to further her studies in the sub-degree program, and yet she couldn't get a pass in the examination, and now a claim has been filed against her for the refund of bursaries. And there are many self-financed courses saying that it's on QF level 4, but in fact things are all in a mess. In terms of bridging to other or top-up courses, they can't fulfill the requirements. And there are also some 5 or 6 young people who have completed the cadet courses who can become vessel masters for ocean-going vessels. They're on QF level 3, and they say that even if they become the vessel master earning $80, $90 or $100,000, they can't be regarded as a university graduate, because the QF doesn't recognize it. But in other jurisdictions, they are already regarded as master degree holders, and I believe them because their textbooks are very thick, and they must go to the Ivy marine courses, marine school, or to work as lecturers, earning far less. So how can they be incentivized? Secretary. Now, on operational details like property management, I'll defer to Deputy Secretary. I just want to supplement 2 points. What we're trying to do is to link the professional standards with academic qualifications under the QF And we must bear in mind that recognition mustn't be a subjective. We need objective criteria. Next, about associate degree or sub-degree. For the grant loan portion, those programs must be QF recognized, and I'll defer to Deputy Secretary to talk about the details. Only 30 seconds left. First of all, we ask students to enroll in courses under the QF register or the qualifications register. They must be QF recognized in order to get the subsidy. Next, about the qualifications and professional standards. Under the credit system, we would like to see the credit that transferable to courses in higher institutes. All right, time is up. I think your proposal will be submitted to Finance Committee later. So you should focus, you should prepare some answers for the recognition of QF and also in the property management sector in response to Mr. Tan Ka-piu's concerns. Next, Mr. KWOK Wai-keung. As mentioned in the paper, the 19 ITACs covered sectors in which the working population or the young people accounts for 46% of the total working populations, but there are only 9,000 applications. So there is a great difference. So far, has the administration considered the reasons why there is a so low a percentage in the number of applications for QF? So that's a question for you. Secondly, on bridging, as in Deputy Secretary's reply, this is very important, on the transfer of credits and how this can be recognized in other jurisdictions. When can this be done? When can you give us a concrete reply? Thirdly, on paragraph 13 of the paper, in relation to some SCS, some teaching materials would be prepared or training packages would be prepared. So what is the timetable? When will it be ready? Last point is about new arrivals. Many new arrivals work as a professional in the mainland, but in Hong Kong their qualifications are not recognized, so they cannot get good jobs. They resort to non-skilled jobs or even rely on benefits. They don't want that. They have professional qualifications. How can the QF help these new arrivals? Secretary, I'll defer to Deputy Secretary to talk about that operational details. We have 530 courses under QF, and in order to expedite our progress, as in para 13, we'd like to provide more resources for the ITACs to develop training packages. 4 ITACs have started their work. It's expected to be ready in the third quarter of 2014, and we are expecting more ITACs to do the same thing. And on the recognition of qualifications, the QF covers roughly 46% of the total working population, and the QF only recognize 8 sectors out of the 1990 ACs, and we would like to obtain or forge consensus with other sectors and roll out similar programs as soon as possible. We have 11 sectors left. We need consensus, and we need to take a gradual approach. We're happy to see that for the property management sector, On the promotion of a promotion from the employer and employee side, we have seen a substantial increase in number of applications, and we'd like this to happen in other sectors as well. And I hope various stakeholders, including the labor unions, can join hands to step up publicity. Next, on the credit transfer and bridging in 2012, we announced the CAT system, the credit accumulation and transfer system, starting from the 1st of January 2014. All programs can adopt the credit transfer system on level 1 to 4, so that we have a common point for credit transfer and recognition. This is a big leap. We have seen progress, and for multiple pathways on various diploma programs and degree programs, we have seen the transfer of credits. We'd like to see more development in this regard. On recognition for qualifications of new arrivals, there are different means. They can take part in QF recognized programs and get the qualifications required. For example, for the Yijin program, they can take part in the programs, and there are also other QF recognized programs run by the VTC or ERB, and they can similarly get the recognized qualifications under these programs. Finally, a question from me, followed by conclusion. We have a $1 billion fund proposal. Do you think that we need another discussion at the panel, or can they proceed to submitting it to the Finance Committee for funding application? So please consider it. Please consider the question. I hope the Secretary would heed all the views explained or expressed today. And I have one question. Is it the case that, as mentioned by Mr. Peter Jiang, is the $10 million include, and together with investment return, altogether $50 million, what will be the annual budget available? And another suggestion is how we can support or do more to support the QF. First of all, how can we encourage more employees to take up the QF recognized programs? Some publicity can be done to trade associations. Some subsidies can be provided. There might be documentation work involved. Will the some $60 million fund be used in this way? Secondly, can subsidies be given to organizations to develop programs? There are subsidies for developing QF recognized programs. And for developing programs on levels 1 to 3, no subsidy is provided. Can some money be given to these organizations? I hope that you, in a minute or so, you can answer my question. I need to ask whether they support this paper to be submitted to the Finance Committee. Thank you, Chairman. A brief reply. It's around $40 or $50 million. And in fact, in the past, we utilized $30 million whilst we ran all the advisory committees. We would like to try to encourage them as much as possible. That's the first point. Secondly, we want to provide more resources for ITACs to implement the proposal. This is the major principle. Secondly, they should not just prepare training packages for themselves. They should be able to engage educational and training organizations to prepare training packages. So this is a major area, and they will be incorporated. So time is important, Chairman. We hope that funding can be obtained as soon as possible. About engaging labor unions in encouraging them to take QF recognized courses, yes, I already replied that the labor unions are also members. This paper shall be submitted to the Finance Committee. Any objection? Mr. Peter Zhang. Chairman, I think it's hard for us to object. However, there should be papers available on the discussion you've just had before the FC meeting, so that we can follow up on its progress at the FC. I think it's important. I don't know when this will be submitted to the FC. Perhaps before submitting the proposal to FC, you can give the panel another paper so that we can walk it through again, and we can submit written questions at FC if necessary. And we support the paper to be submitted to FC. Yes, I think at the same time papers can be distributed to members, and the responses will also be given in the paper on the points raised. So there'll be a paper to the panel and also a formal submission of the proposal to FC. Okay, so we support the submission. Over to the next panel.